Okay, today I wanted to talk about comic manga. I've been manga, as I suppose you're supposed to say. Manga I've been reading, which is called Kaiju Number 8, and it's one I started actually not too long ago. It's not. There's only about probably about I think it's just around 100 chapters that are out so far. I think it's been out for 2-3 years. I think somewhere around there. A few years, so enough to get decently far along, but not enough to build up an insane number of chapters. So I think I've read it all, most of it in about probably about I think it was about 2 or 3 days, which I read fairly fast. And with comics, I generally zoom through them pretty easily because there's of course a lot more pictures and words, and I kind of zip through them as far as it goes. So it doesn't take me too long to go through it. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. It was one that I didn't caught me by surprise. I would say one thing, and this is not necessarily a criticism or anything, is that it is a fairly, I would say maybe simple is not the right way to look at it, because people will probably take that as a negative. Simple, it's maybe more, just a better word is direct or straightforward. Is better for it, because what the story does is, as you might guess, it's pretty straightforward. There's a main character to kind of get everyone caught up to speed. So there's a main character whose name is Kafka, which I really like the name Kafka. I'm kind of curious. I didn't know there's Kafka on the Shore by Murakami, so I didn't know if this was a Japanese or a Japanese thing where the name is actually there, or if they're just both fans of Franz Kafka, the writer. He is living and working as part of the cleanup crew, and they clean up after monsters who are continually attacking. Let's X that out. Continually attacking the city. And basically, they're the special group called the Defense Force, which fight the monsters, kill them, and then his cleanup crew, of course, cleans up the monsters. Because as you might imagine, Godzilla or the giant monsters leave lots of body parts that something has to be done with them. And they basically harvest them to making them into weapons and armor for them, more or less. So this is our MC for this one, MC. And he's kind of, I guess you would call it, he is stuck in life, basically. He is stuck. So he's not going anywhere. He once had a dream to join the defense force, but has since failed at that. He failed getting in, and so now he's basically just kind of more or less given up and is just working as the cleanup crew. So this is kind of where we start off with. So this is kind of it's a good start. Basically what we have is we have a character in stasis, more or less. And so he's not going to change anything, basically. So he's kind of living through the motions, more or less. Kind of wondering, he's kind of past the point of asking if he's happy. He's single. He doesn't really have too much that he's going for. He's pretty good at his job. He's a pretty good guy. Gets along with him. He's pretty much kind of middle of the road, basically, for as far as that goes. With it. So there's nothing else to be said. So, and this is kind of where the story starts. So then, of course, the question is, what changes? Because this is not a story that we can really do much with. So what changes as far as this goes? Well, what happened is there's a young kid whose name is Reno, which I think the translation I read put it as Lino, but Wikipedia says Reno. So we're going with Reno. Or maybe I just can't read. Very possible. Reno shows up. He joins the cleaning crew and wants to help clean up some stuff. And he's just having a blast. Just kidding. He's basically super serious, and his dream is to join the Defense Force. And basically, he kind of mocks or asks fun of Kafka, why did you quit? What happened? Why did you give up on your dream? And everything like that. And it kind of starts off, initially I was kind of curious how they were going to play this off. If they played off as a rivalry, or if it was a negative, is this the guy who's going to be a dick and then leave, and then it's going to be kind of a hate rivalry? So it's like Kafka's continuing trying to catch up with Reno, because Reno is much younger. He's like 18 years old, and then the main character, I think, is 32. 32, there we go. 18 and 32. And so they're both, there's this big age divide that he's got going with him because, as again, he's kind of the washed up, he's stuck, basically stuck. So he's no longer in the prime of his youth or anything. He's in the regular of just the youth of his youth. From there, so finish that off. So he decides, and he kind of, Reno's drive and determination and ability kind of inspires Kafka to try and join it again. But then, of course, they are attacked by a monster, a giant, scary monster. And Kafka kind of finally rallies himself. I don't remember what it was. I think it was kind of like a bug monster or something, but I can't draw bugs, so we're just going to deal with this. He's got a tongue. And that's supposed to be hidden, so to pretend you don't see that. He's got some arms. We'll give him three toes. There we go. Here's our monster. And there's etc. back here. So this is, they're attacked by a monster, and Kafka kind of rallies himself together. He saves Reno from the monster and kind of readies himself to die. Because one part, which is part of his backstory, is Kafka's childhood friend, who's Mina, is a commander in the defense force. So she's like super badass in the force already, and he is, of course, nobody. He's stuck. So it's kind of this childhood friend that he had. They made this deal that they were going to kind of expand and go all the way together, but he has clearly failed in that regard. So he's this is kind of adds into his dream, and then he gave up and quit, and Reno's inspired him, but now he's going to die because he saved Reno, but in so he's probably going to die himself, and then Reno saves him. They decide to do it, and they try and fight and do all this stuff, and then I'm pretty sure it's Mina or someone comes up and saves him. Sorry, I zipped through this really fast, and my brain is already starting to fall apart. They're saved by the defense court, and then the monster dies. He gets X'd, basically unalived, more or less. And so he dies, and then this is kind of the setting of the scene, basically, where then Kafka then kind of reestablishes his dream. He is ready to join the defense force, more or less. He wants to finally give it another try. Let's see. Try again. He wants to try again because he's, clearly he's given up. Now, after this life-changing event where he's almost died, he really realizes what he wanted to do and what he wanted to accomplish, and so he's going to give it another shot. And this is kind of the beginning of the story. And then they go home, or he's walking home, and then a little monster jumps up and jumps into his mouth. This looks a bit more like Jabba the Hutt than anything, so it's a little bit different from this. I think we'll give it some antennas. I think it was fairly bug-looking, basically, so it's kind of... This looks pretty horrific. But basically, some sort of monster jumps in his mouth, he swallows it, and then realizes now that he can now transform into one of these monsters, basically. He's given kind of like a bio Iron Man suit, basically. Bio Iron Man suit. I did it in my sketch for the thumbnail thing. He kind of looks a little bit like this. He's kind of got like the monster scales and armor and everything like that. And he is very powerful, basically. He becomes super powerful. And then that is more or less. So that's kind of the basic or establishing characters setting that we're working with. So this is what it is, and then basically they go and join the defense force, and then kind of basically they go through a sort of I want to call it a challenge arc, because it's different from a training arc, where basically they have a series of course, challenges that they have to go through, and through that they're introduced to a number of side characters. We have Prodigy Girl. We have, Rich Guy, rich guy. We have Reno, Kafka, and there's a few other side characters who actually kind of disappear a little bit. There's Inara, I believe. What was his name? Let me see. No. Is he not going to be on my list? He's not going to be on the list. I think it was Inara, who's kind of the arrogant, a bit more the arrogant, try-hard sort of variety. And these kind of rank up the Defense Force cadets, basically. These are the beginning of the newbies for this trial run. We, of course, have Mina, who is the commander, and Hoshino, who's the vice commander, and a few others from there. But basically, they're going through this trial run, and then something goes wrong, monsters attack, and Kafka is forced to transform in order to save people, because he's kind of figured out more or less how to transform at will. So he's able to go in, transform, and save the day, and basically then hiding the fact, though, that he is secretly a monster. So basically we kind of got like a secret power sort of deal going on, where he's the only one who knows that he's actually really powerful and everyone else thinks he's really weak. We can transform. We'll just put transform. I think I put an extra R in there. Transform. Transform in there. But, and basically that's kind of the setting that we've got here. So one of the things I kind of wanted to highlight as far as it goes is kind of just to show what the story did to kind of start off more or less, that it did really well, is basically we've got a main character. He's likable. He's stuck, but he's likable. He's really easygoing. He's relaxed. He's unrelatable, basically. You know, he's not this super driven Reno character who basically could have been a main character in probably a 2000s era shonen, basically, because he's incredibly driven. He's kind of almost obsessively driven, more or less, to it. And then, whereas the main character here is happy-go-lucky, he's kind of washed up. So he's basically, if somebody failed to become a main character in the 2000s shonen, they basically became Kafka. So now he's getting his second chance and he's working back at it. We like him. We got basically a goal to move towards to. This is the one thing where it does really good, where we have a very clear goal that he's working to. He wants to join the Defense Force, and he wants to be beside his childhood friend, Mina. He wants to join and basically fight alongside her. We gotta have Reno as kind of a friendly rival. Not really rival. Rival is probably a bad word because they're very much on the same page for it, but basically reminds him of all that he wanted to be and all that he wanted to accomplish. And then we have kind of motivating forces, where basically they're giant monsters that are continually attacking people. And nobody's a super big fan of that, so he wants to help save people because people don't want to get murdered and killed indiscriminately by this or this one. He also wants to stay alive and figure out what's going on with the monster inside him, this little guy who basically jumps in his mouth. So we're going to figure out, hopefully one day, what's going on. We've got the mystery of where the heck are these monsters even coming from. So we've got all these aspects that are at play, and we got the potential to power up, basically, because he wants to get stronger, of course, to work with this goal, to stand beside Mina and join her and fight her as childhood friend in against the monsters and everything. So this is kind of the basic setup that we've kind of established as far as the beginning few chapters of the comic, which it does really well because it really pulls you in, because basically we really want to figure out what happens next, which is always the biggest question for it. So, but one thing I kind of want to more specifically talk about that the comic does pretty good, that is a bit more unique or different from others, from say One Piece or Naruto or any of the traditional ones, is that it goes through and does a really good job of developing its side characters, basically. It really spends a decent amount. There's actually a section kind of towards where I'm getting caught up. I think I'm around chapter 100, basically. I'm pretty sure that's 100 on the dot is where I stopped. Where basically I feel like the main character is barely in it for the other ones. So kind of if you've watched my videos before, we've kind of talked about this overpowered main character or what it does. So there's a few advantages to having strong side characters, and we're just going to kind of go through some of those. One of those, it gives you a decent amount of variety. We basically have variety of backgrounds and motivations. Basically, you can play a bit more with it. So where this character can have a unique background and motivation, this character can then have a different one, this character can have their own, this one, this. And we can really get time to flesh it out. Makes a bit more rich of a world, of course, as opposed to only having one character go through with it. But if you think about it, One Piece has managed to do it basically with no issues. So it's not say one is bad or anything like that, but this is kind of what it does. If you watched my video where I talked about Mob Psycho 100, you can see it's actually he continually invests into side characters heavily amount, where you can then have this different point of view that goes forward with it. It allows, one, I think it sets up better for the MC, the main character, of course, to be the save the day moments, basically. This is the one where all hope is lost, and how can we fight this super strong guy? Oops. How can we fight this super strong guy? And then the main character shows up suddenly. You know, they're up here. Let's see. Job. We'll give him a sword real quick. And then this is the soon-to-be-dead ally person who's like, no, don't kill me. And then this, of course, is the villain who's got an even bigger sword. And we'll give him a mustache. Basically. So that's the save the day moments. You know, it's like all hope is lost. There's no backup. What are we going to do? You know, and this, if you have this different point of view, you get to set this up a little bit more, because instead of us realizing that, oh, the main character is, you know, running, you know, here's, let's see, footsteps. I was trying to draw footsteps, but it's a bit harder than I thought. You know, he's going to be footstepping in his way all the way over here. And if we know this is coming, if we see this is coming, it's not going to be, you know, all of a sudden. It sets up these really great moments. This is kind of why, I'm trying to think, the fight that usually comes to mind is Naruto versus Pain, kind of towards the end. I think where there's a part where Naruto's basically out of it, and then Hinata gets beat up, and then Naruto jumps back into it, because it's kind of this, it kind of resets that and goes, oh, he is able to basically have a save the day fight, even though he's basically, they've been there the whole time. It kind of sets it up for him to re-enter the fight, basically, for it. Different point of view, and probably my favorite thing that it does with it is you have characters, there's basically a risk that characters can die. This is something that Hunter x Hunter did really well. This is probably one of the few mangas that actually really capitalizes off on this. Game of Thrones does this really well. Of course, they do it with main characters, where they kill off main characters. That's what it's kind of story is known for. But basically what it does is if you have a side character basically go in and do risky things, there's actually the potential that they can die. You know, you really don't think that the main character is going to die, more or less, because if it does, then that's just basically where the story ends. And that's rarely, I don't really think anyone ever actually really does that. It'd probably be interesting because it'd be different and surprising, but it would be really boring because then you wouldn't care anymore, because the character you've invested so much in is now dead, so you're just moving on to the next one. So this is what it allows them to do. It allows you to, I would say this is kind of more of a meta thing it allows you to do, basically, but you have pacing, where you can go around and really slow the world down, because basically it's, instead of having one timeline, you're basically showing this person's timeline, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, all within this moment. So, you know, if time is going this way, and we basically have this plot line versus this plot line, you know, this is basically the scale in time. So again, this may not really matter. For most stories it won't, but it basically allows you to go and shift from here to here to here to here to here to here into the other things. Another thing, this is one that Full Metal Alchemist did quite well, is where it kind of introduces the idea that the main character may not be the strongest person ever, and that's okay. They don't have to be. It's really cool if they are, and if they, especially if you build them up to be, But they don't have to be. They can at least work their way up there. This is something that Roy Mustang's character did really well. Just one of them. Roy Mustang was kind of hinted at being the most powerful dude and the smartest the whole time. I mean, Al will probably become more powerful than Roy, inevitably. But, you know, he's really powerful and very smart. And he's been fighting along this all along. And it's okay. It basically kind of fights against the chosen one analogy, where instead of it being, you know, only the single chosen one hero, it basically allows you to have a bit more of a rich cast of characters. You know, Major Armstrong and all these other people that can come in and help out, more or less, as opposed to the single one main character who's the one who does all the stuff, you know, the chosen one, basically, as because I do feel like we may be kind of moving away from that. The stories kind of go in cycles, and different metas or things catch on, more or less, as you will. And yeah, and it kind of lets you break the mold and kind of get a bit more creative in that regard. So let's see. And basically what you do is you set yourself up for these continually developing characters. The other thing that I really like that he does, that you have to run into if you don't develop the characters or spend enough time, is they kind of run into what I call Krillin them. I'll find some space over here. Krillin is, of course, the character from Dragon Ball Z. Oops. And he starts off able to 1v1 Goku, basically. And then he becomes super weak, and then the story continues on forever and ever and ever and ever. Oops. Get this out of the way. There we go. He basically becomes weak forever and ever and is more or less a useless character. He's kind of there for comic relief and to hit on that android lady. That's basically all he's good for. But if you invest in them properly and invest in them in enough time, basically it allows you to build up all these different characters and develop them and kind of level them up, basically. Level them up, give them power-ups, you know, kind of invest in them, show them in their own training arcs, kind of give them a reason as to why they are going to get stronger and stronger. And you can kind of build up towards, more or less, if you wanted to, go to for kind of a King Arthur sort of deal. And what I mean by that is, of course, is the Knights of the Round Table. So basically a whole bunch of characters that are really strong in their own right, just one table, in their own right, but at least it lets you build up and kind of expand on this. So you kind of have a bit of a richer, more well-developed world, and especially where the characters can then help each other and really interact each other. You don't have this risk of doing this. Another more modern one is Renji from Bleach, who got his Bankai in like episode 2, it felt like, and then was useless ever since because he never leveled up beyond that. Nothing ever happened, which that was kind of just a fault of the author. He kind of had to have a whole arc. I remember where he had Inori, Sato, and the Quincy guy. I can't remember his name. Where he had to level them up basically because they were more or less useless. And then they became useful again, and they went back to being useless more or less 2 seconds later because the story just kept progressing at the power levels kept going up and 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 up. Because I would say maybe he fell victim to this. I haven't really reread Bleach in a good while, but it was a single main character, so somebody's developing this really fast. So basically the time, more or less, you can't go back and he didn't split it up. So basically if you're all the way here, you don't really want to restart anything here. You kind of have to have everyone level up and kind of expand at the same rate and same pace. Otherwise, you never want to give the audience the feeling that you're going backwards. Backwards generally is meh. You don't really want to unless granted, with story writing you can do whatever you want, but you want to build it up and kind of have a good reason for making it that way. And that's how it works more or less for it. So yeah, I think get out of here. Here we go. So I hope you guys learned something. I just kind of wanted to go through and kind of talk about some thoughts and kind of point out some things that were this story did really well, because I'm looking forward to reading more of it. Unfortunately, I'm caught up now, so this is kind of the painful point. So I'll probably let it sit and build up and then reread it again down the road. But hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.